second of two great games here at the X thus far. Hermantown. Welcome in, Cake Show edition of Bumper to Bumper. Gaardsy in for Barreiro today. Brett Blakemore, second of his split shifts today. He was hanging out with Nordo 9 to noon. He's now hanging out with us 3 to 6:30. Thanks, everybody, for checking us out. We will give some high school hockey updates as the show goes along because the Class A has started today at Grand Casino Arena. St. Cloud Cathedral and Matamidi now tied at 1. Heck of a hockey game, the second of two great games here at the X thus far. With 3 minutes to go, I think, in the second period. Pat Kessler's going to make his weekly appearance right around 5:15. Alec Lewis is going to join us at 4:30. And my buddy Jace Frederick to talk Wolves and other matters next segment at 3:15. You can hit the Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line 64686. You can also tweet me at Gaardsy as we are here until 6:30. Brett, as a guy who is known to have Wisconsin roots, you and I don't see eye to eye very much on things, right?
That's correct.
We have different perspectives on a lot of different things. We have different interests. We have different opinions on how certain teams are, how they're run. We have different allegiances, right? We're oil and water at some point.
Sometimes. Football mostly.
When it comes to that. Football for sure. And I think the conventional wisdom is I try to make you feel bad about your respective football teams. That's what I should do as a Minnesotan, whether it's because of my Gopher ties or the fact that I'm a lifelong Vikings fan. And I could make you feel, well, let me just ask it this way. How do you feel about your favorite professional football team right now, the Green Bay Packers? Where you are, where you've been, where you're going after just a complete meltdown loss against the Bears, right?
Which one?
The playoff loss.
Yeah.
Where you were up by like 100. Matt LaFleur is completely in his bag. He's dealing. Jordan Love looks like your namesake Brett Favre and the guy that preceded him, Aaron Rodgers, combined into one with Bart Starr mixed into this holy trinity of Green Bay Packer awesomeness. And then you lose to the Bears and you're done. And everybody wants LaFleur fired. I heard Packer review that week. It was very funereal. How are you feeling, how many weeks after that? 7, 8 weeks after that?
Yeah.
About how things are going for your squad?
I feel mostly fine and hopeful. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic and we're winning the big game this year, but they've got good players, and if Micah can be healthy week 1, they've still got a chance to be good. I'd like to see some more cornerbacks added, but I was never on the fire LaFleur train as much as Cinny was, but I was like, something's got to change. And, things are moving around, and Jeff Hafley's gone, which stinks. But for the most part, I'm hopeful, but not over the moon. We're winning the big game.
I'll just say this. You should feel so good. You should feel so good. You know why you should feel good?
Why is that?
Because you're not me. Because you're not 43-year-old Gaardsy, who is getting back on the quarterback carousel. We played that. You don't have to play it because it's not that good of a bit, but
I like it.
I appreciate the hustle. Because you don't have to, for the 20th time, 15th time in my life, we're going back to the well. Because that's what's happening. We've talked about it for a week and a half. Every single time, every day, I turn on, I drop my kids off at school. I get back about 8:05, 8:10, depending on how big of a meltdown it's been in the morning to get them out the door. If we're relatively on time, I'm back in my driveway about 8:02, about the time the power trip takes their break. I wait in my car for that to happen. I go in, I turn on YouTube, I hit the KFAN YouTube channel, and I watch the stream of the power trip just to see what's going on. Today it was Taylor Heisey and Parker Fox in the 8 o'clock hour. It was phenomenal. So good. And then I turn it on ESPN, and usually the rerun of Get Up is playing on ESPN2. The show's on 7 to 9 on the mothership.
They're breaking down Dak Prescott contract and LeBron's next team.
Usually, yes, but that's my point. The last 10 days, within the first 15 to 20 minutes on the national sports shows of record, it's all about what the Vikings are going to do at quarterback without fail. We've played the sound bites for 9 straight days from Indianapolis to today. If I wanted to today, I could inundate the audience with another round of national experts and pundits talking about what the Vikings are going to do. I still might. I have a couple in the chamber. But I came to that realization, and I don't know if I've just been avoiding it or denying it the last week or so, but it's amazing to me that we are back in this familiar position where we have no idea who the quarterback is going to be. And we have no idea what the future is going to look like. And the guy that we all thought it was going to be, or at least for a little bit longer, everybody is seemingly done with. Because if the rumors are true, and I believe Kevin Seifert, who tweeted this out yesterday, and I'm sure Dan talked about it with him yesterday when he was here or on the show, if Kyler Murray is in fact one of those quarterback options that they are very interested in talking to and possibly signing now that he's available, what was your favorite 9 moment? What was your favorite J.J. McCarthy moment? Because it's over. You're not bringing Kyler Murray in to push J.J. in training camp. You're just not. And I'd be surprised if you were. I mean, I guess anything's possible. But I sat there today from the news of the last 24 hours that Murray is going to be released next week. He's already done the emotional Instagram post. That's part of the separation process now in anything. I don't know if he's gotten the thank you graphic from Arizona. I suppose that'll happen. That'll happen next week when it's official, when they can actually release him as the league year goes. But I feel like we're not making a big enough deal about that we're back at square one again, I think, for the Vikings. I know we've talked about it, and I heard Rosen a little bit during comment acknowledge the fact that up till now, even though I'm, as you know, always slower than everybody to fire everybody, cut everybody, move on from everybody. I don't mind patience. I think even some of these quarterback success stories that we've seen the last handful of years would lend it to patience. Sam Darnold would be Exhibit A. A year ago, nobody thought Sam Darnold, well, 2 years ago, nobody thought Sam Darnold was going to be hoisting a Lombardi as a starting quarterback, and guess what? Now he has, right?
You would have made a PST tournament from any year had
Seriously.
you said that. Yeah.
But I'm just thinking about the gravity of a year and a half ago after he tore his meniscus and Kevin O'Connell's in Cleveland for the joint practices, and he's talking about, I feel so good about where we are with JJ. I've seen so much. He's going to be our franchise quarterback. Nothing has done anything to dissuade me of that. He's been everything we've hoped for and more. And now we obviously know that's not the case. And I know they need to win now, and I know they want to win now. And I know there are some that say, well, it's not necessarily over for JJ. Doesn't it feel over for JJ? Which is stunning when you think about it. It's almost a quicker fall than the guy that so many were trying to compare him to during the season, easily correctable Christian Ponder. It feels quicker. Ponder stayed healthier. Now he had one season where they got to the playoffs, couldn't even play in the playoff game against Green Bay because he was injured in the win and in game, the best game of his career.
They're easily correctable.
But it's just depressing that we're back here. That we're having to consider, well, what does the Kyler Murray acquisition mean? Does it mean that it's over? Does it mean he's competing? Do they still like JJ? Do they not like JJ? The fact that we have to have these pecking order lists now again, it just hit me like a truck today. And maybe it's because I'm wearing the scars of 43 years of Vikings quarterbacking, where it doesn't affect me as much as it should. But today, for whatever the reason, and yesterday it hit me where I just said, man, we are back. We are back. And we're comfortable here. If you've been a Vikings fan as long as I have, which has been my entire life, you're comfortable with the nomadic quarterback lifestyle of just bringing people in, cycling people through. Guy can be 40 years old like Favre was, your namesake. Bring him in, couple of years, 1 year's good, 1 year's bad. We can go through the list. I'm not going to do it. But it's amazing to me. It's amazing that here we are. So that's why, to start the show, I wanted you to feel better.
Thank you.
Because I know you've got your own problems across state lines. I know you're not happy. People aren't happy with LaFleur. I know there's coordinator churn all the time. I get all of that, but man, it could be. You need to go to your Packer message boards and just continue to. I'm sure you guys already do that. Say, hey, we're not Minnesota, and I'm sure you have higher standards than us. That's what you tell me all the time. That you have higher standards than us in general.
Don't throw me under the bus like that.
I mean, it's true. You tell me that all the time. Your standards are way higher than mine. So I get it that it's probably faint praise, but I just wanted to pump your tires a little bit in case you were down today for whatever the reason about how things ended for you.
Yeah.
With another empty season, losing to the Bears, who's a big rival. Obviously, you have your franchise quarterback. I'm not as big on Jordan Love as most people are, but man,
I think he's fantastic.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do, but it's just amazing. Because, by the way, I'm all in on Kyler Murray.
Really?
I think, why not? Why not? Because clearly they're out on JJ. They're bored with JJ. If you're in on Kyler, I don't know how you can be in on JJ. Because I don't think it's again, now he could sign a 1-year minimum contract. You just take a flyer and say, keep working. We'll keep working with the JJ. We'll keep you going. There's some stuff I want to talk to you about Alec Lewis that he's written about just the overall handling of being the franchise quarterback that the Vikings were stunned that JJ wasn't good at. I want to know more about that because that is troubling. Like just the emotional stuff, the face of the franchise stuff, all that. But it's just been my dauber's a little down the last 12 to 18 hours.
Which is unlike you.
Usually I'm glass half full.
Yeah, you're run it back island until the island literally burns to the ground.
Exactly. Yeah. Or I'm let the thing breathe a little bit. Yeah. Let's see where it goes. Let's see where things develop. Let's not just fire everybody right away. And that's kind of how I've been on JJ in general because he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't played well, but it's like you traded up. It was a top 10 pick, right? Like this was supposed to be your guy. And 2 years in, we're going to Kyler Murray maybe, or very intrigued, which again, smoke him if you got him. Let's give it a shot. But it's just nothing ever goes to plan. So I just want our eyes wide open on that because it's just it's been an amazing transformation here because none of this is accidental. Like the stuff that you see from national pundits talking about who they might be interested in, who they're considering, their whole overall thought process, they're not just making that up. The phone call is coming from inside the house when you see all the things that are being leaked and speculated upon. That's no accident. That's coming from somebody. And in this case, you can surmise it's coming from Egan. All right, we'll turn the page when we come back. My buddy Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press is going to join us. We're going to talk about the Wolves. They win again last night. Anthony Edwards was ridiculous. That's how I was going to start the show today in general was you want the cure for the random Tuesday night game against a bad team being compelling. If you got Anthony Edwards, you're good because he was unbelievable again last night, just electrifying the crowd. And that's why they call him box office. That's why some people think he's the face of the NBA, and we're lucky to have him in Minnesota. We're going to talk about that with Jace Frederick, the season in general. His guy, Kyle Anderson, is back. So much to get to. Gaardsy in for Barreiro. Jace Frederick after this.
You're listening to The Fan.
Welcome back. Gaardsy here, Cake Show edition of Bumper to Bumper. Brett Blakemore here as well. Alec Lewis will join at 4:30. Pat Kessler in the 5 o'clock hour. Now on the Connecticut Water Systems hotline, our buddy Jace Frederick covers the Minnesota Timberwolves for the Pioneer Press. He watched them beat the Memphis Grizzlies last night, 117-110 at home. The Wolves have won 4 in a row. They are in the 4 spot in the Western Conference. Percentage points behind the Houston Rockets for that coveted third spot, third seed, I should say. Anthony Edwards had 41 points last night. Jace, how you been, my friend? It's been too long.
Hey, Gaardsy, I agree, but I'm doing great, man. How about with you?
I'm doing all right. The Wolves seem to be doing okay. Anthony Edwards even said last night it's the most fun he's had in his entire life. I never knew a 4-game winning streak could be so inspiring, but the team has seemed to have found something in the last handful of games. A, will it last? And B, what have they found?
Yeah, will it last? I don't know. There will be bumps, I'm sure, between now and the playoffs. I don't expect a really, straight sail, 22 games or whatever it is the rest of the way. Though they did have something close to that last year, and that kind of is what buoyed them into that postseason run back to the West Final. So maybe this is just another post-All-Star break finishing kick here to the finish line. And that, I think, is what it would be ideal, and it'd be what they're searching for. And I think what has hit for them, obviously Ant's in a really nice rhythm right now, but I really do think it is this bench right now and what they have kind of built and what they continue to add to with the addition of Kyle Anderson, but Ayo Dosunmu, Bones Highland, those guys have fit together nicely, and I think they've kind of aided a lot of the star players and maybe even kind of put on some Band-Aids or at least adjusted things like pace that needed to be better. So I think they've really complemented what the starting group already has and does and provided a nice change of pace that this team really kind of needed, to where the bench transfer were a real problem, especially earlier in the year. It's slowly gotten a little better, but had its issues. And right now it's really more of a strength for Minnesota, especially against some of these teams that either aren't full strength or aren't necessarily trying to win. And when those second units come in, Minnesota's bench is really taking it to them right now.
Yeah, let's talk about that bench. I know you wrote about it last night, and I heard you on the post-game show last night as well when I was listening on the Timberwolves channel when you guys were talking to Finchie about just those bench guys, and you mentioned Io and Bones and the pace that they play with. Did we anticipate when DeSumo was traded here that he and Bones would play so much together? I'll be honest, I didn't anticipate that, but it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I did think that Bones was still going to have a role, but I wasn't sure what it would be. I didn't think they would just go down to 7 with Io kind of obviously spotting in as that 7th man behind Nas, but Bones has maintained a fairly large role, and those two have complemented each other. And you're right, they both like to get out and run. And when you have your 2 lead guards on that best second unit constantly looking to go push, that really kind of gets things going. Because no matter what position one guy's in, the other's bringing it up the court. They're hitting hit-ahead passes to each other. And Minnesota's so athletic, but oftentimes athletic with guys who don't have much interest in running. Even Ant said, I don't like to play fast. And he's not alone. There's a lot of star players in the NBA that are so skilled that they would actually just prefer the half-court game of, let me size things up and pick my spots to attack and get to my spots and shoot like we've seen Ant do so successfully. But Minnesota's kind of a wagon when they get up and down the court because they have the athletes. They usually have more athletes than the opponent. And so like Ant said last night, when Io and Bones are out there, if I don't run, I can't get the ball because they're past me.
Right.
So those two kind of kick those guys into gear, and they've been a really nice fit. They're both scoring options, shooting options, and even if they give up points, they're going up and down so fast that it's very rare that their minutes are losers. And when the opponent's bench isn't very good, they're creating so many possessions that they're really able to capitalize. And all of a sudden it's 4 minutes, and they just outscored it by 6 and extended the lead or made up a gap or whatever it may be.
What have you made of the push-pull between Ant the last few weeks and his head coach? And, he brought back the "this is what I bleeping do" last night, I think, in jest, which I thought was awesome when he was on his heater after he hit, I think, the last 3-pointer. We know what he said to Finch a few weeks ago. Finch was asked about it, I think, by Johnny, said it was no big deal, whatever. You guys all know that relationship better than the rest of us, but what have you kind of made of Ant, obviously being a playmaker, which he's been very good at, but also, the best player on the team and one of the best players in the league that probably does need to shoot it 29 times on certain nights. How have you seen that whole thing kind of develop here recently?
Yeah, I don't think it's any kind of recent development at all. I think you could go back for years now of is there enough ball movement, playmaking, because you talk about that, and the assist numbers are career lows. So that has kind of dipped this year, frankly. But the shooting and the scoring efficiency has been so high that it's kind of covered up for it. And he really has become almost a different kind of guard in that there is a lot less playmaking and it is a lot of scoring guard, but at an efficiency that we haven't seen in a long time. So I think it constantly has been hey, we need more of this. And Ant's almost kind of going the other way with it. But it's at a level that you can't really complain about right now.
Right.
So that is a little bit of an odd dynamic of this isn't what we necessarily want as a team always, but nobody can argue with the results. And so that has been an interesting thing. And I think it'll continue to be an interesting thing of, hey, they want to win games, and if Ant is scoring points and winning games, great. And I think they'll probably just wonder, what's the long-term sustainability of this? But we'll have to see because it's hard to argue with what he's done for most of the season, frankly.
What is going on with Julius Randle?
Yeah, so last night was the first time where he, post-game, talked a little bit about illness, which obviously Finch did mention after that one game where he really struggled, and then physical things, and he said he's feeling a little better physically every day. He's bumps and bruises, but I'm going to keep going out there. He wants to play every game this season. I don't always know if that's the smartest goal for somebody to have because there is an occasional time where it's nice to take a day off and actually let your body heal and be fresher. And if you miss 2 games here or there, it's not the end of the world. But it has looked just off. And then it looks like when he's off, he presses a little bit. And then it doesn't go his way. And then it starts to kind of even go farther the wrong way. But last night was at least a little bit more of, okay, you are bigger and stronger and taller than everybody on the court right now.
Yeah.
Be aggressive, be decisive, get to the rim. So there was more of that. But the 3-point shot's not falling, and he just looked out of rhythm, and he looked out of sorts. And even against Denver, there were a couple bad turnovers. So hopefully last night for Minnesota was a step for him in the right direction because they need him if they're going to reach their peak as a team.
When they snap themselves out of it, which I think they have, and I mentioned last week, Jace, that if I had $1 million to bet, I would have bet $1 million that they would go into Denver and play well, because that's just what they do, right? And I know Denver's down a couple of guys, and they're kind of scuffling like a lot of teams are scuffling, including the Wolves before this most recent stretch. But when things aren't clicking for them, like, what is it from your perspective? And then how do they seemingly find a way to get themselves out of it as often as they do?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is, like, they know what to do. It's just not the things that are always the most fun to do, especially for all of them. It's like, hey, play harder defensively. Like, take more pride in your individual, like, locking down your guy in the game plan defensively. And you have the bodies and the personnel to do that. And it's move the ball a little bit more offensively, a little bit sharper, and you get out in transition. Like, when they do these things, when they play hard defensively and they get out in transition, they're really hard to beat. They just get in points where they just don't do that. There's guys just kind of letting guys blow by them on the perimeter. There's guys just not paying attention on closeouts and where they should help and being the low man at the rim. And now the other team's scoring. And now you're not getting out in transition. You're playing a lot of half-court offense where they're not terrible, but it's not the same where you truly separate yourself as a team against your opponent. But the Wolves are more talented than a lot of teams, and they know their formula to win. So it's like, when can you decide to do that formula to win games? And there are certain times where they clearly decide to do it, and certain stretches where they decide to do it. And that's why I think it's frustrating for a lot of people when they don't, because it is almost like a snap your fingers thing, because the things they're asked to do aren't like superhuman for them to be a really good team. It's just locking down and saying, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I guess we can lock in defensively here and let everything kind of roll downhill from there.
Well, it felt like last night was a great example. Like, everyone's going to look at the 41 points for Ant in that stretch he had, in the second half, where he basically just closed it out. Even though Memphis was shooting well and scoring, and the Wolves were down 10 pretty much the entire first half, Ant looked like, to me, he was trying to set the right tone. He scored early. He was getting rebounds. He was defending, I thought, at a pretty high level. He matched I think he's one off his career high in steals with 5 last night. He really can be. We ask a lot of him, obviously, but he does set a tone all by himself sometimes on that end, no?
Yeah, and I think that's where, like, Chris Finch has always said he can be the best two-way player in the NBA. And I totally agree with that. I mean, we've seen enough times where I always just point back to Game 3 of the West Finals where Minnesota blew out Oklahoma City.
Correct.
He was that player in the first quarter of that game. Yep. Like, he was just blowing up everything OKC did and getting these steals that led to transition dunks for himself, for his teammates. And that is like, oh, wow, this team looks unbeatable in those moments. And so that's kind of the balance of, like, yeah, he's asked to do a lot offensively, but frankly, he asks himself to do a lot. Like, they would prefer sometimes for him to do less than he's asking of himself on that end and give more the other way. And, like, be the best two-way player. Don't lead the NBA in scoring. Be 10th in scoring and be the best defensive player. That's what I think they would love to find a balance of. And I think there's a lot of times where he gets closer to that in the playoffs. It's just maybe not as fun for him to do in the regular season. But I agree with you last night. And there have been more times recently where that defensive effort has at least been pushed up to like an 8. And that's a pretty good, like, regular season spot for it to be in.
Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press. He's on the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Our first guest on the UglyDeck.com guest lineup. Alec Lewis about an hour from now. Pat Kessler will make his regular Wednesday appearance. Gaardsy in for Barreiro today. Dan will be back tomorrow and Friday. As a guy who's in the building pretty much every night and covers the team pretty much every night, are we on the outside too hard on the Wolves in general for their ups and their downs and kind of where they are? You look up and it feels like, I always look at Finch and it looks like, I joked probably with you when they did that 2-game stretch in New Orleans, who's not a good team. Finchy looked like he wanted to get on one of those Mississippi River boats and just ride off into the Gulf of Mexico and just say, I'm done. The team looked like they were having the time of their lives. But you look up and they're a top 4 seed. They're percentage points away from Houston, who's got Kevin Durant and has been good. And every team in the NBA right now in their last 10 is, 5-5, 5-5, 4-6, 6-4. San Antonio, obviously, and Oklahoma City have separated, but it's kind of a long windup to ask, like, you're in the belly of the beast. Are we on the outside expecting too much for this consistency, or should we, or are we right to say, you know what, this team does have more than they've shown, even though they are obviously in a great position?
No, I think fans were right to be frustrated at various points throughout this season. Like, they are right where they are. They've also been healthier than every team around them.
Good point.
Good point. There's no denying that. I think there's like last week somebody put out an estimated wins lost from guys missing this year, and the Wolves were 30th. Like, they had the least amount of games that they haven't won because of injury, or wins that probably were taken away because they were missing guys. They've had maybe like 17 games total missed from their top 6 this year. And that's a crazy number when you consider like Wemby alone, who's been relatively healthy this year, has missed like 15 games. It's crazy health. And that's why it's like, okay, if you have a year like this where other teams are injured, you're healthy. Even Houston, like they haven't had Fred VanVleet the whole season. They're not going to. That's just their reality, but they're missing one of their top probably like 4 guys. And that's where it's like, okay, this would be a year where you could maybe position yourself like they did a couple years ago as like a 56 whatever win team, and give yourself the best playoff path. Now they can still give themselves a really nice one, but there have been times throughout the season where it's like, what are they doing right now? Where is the attention to detail, the urgency, all of it, where you find yourself, hey, why are you in a group with these like 4 teams that have all been more injured and have more valid reasons for their consistency than you have? So I think that's where like a lot of Finch's, hair pulling and all of this comes out. But, John Krasinski and I always had this talk of, we'll walk out of the arena and be like, yeah, it was a bad loss, but it just doesn't matter. Because they're still in this spot, they can still get to here. And I truly believe whether you're the 3 seed, whether you're the 6, the 4, the 5, I just don't really think it matters that much, because they have a top gear they know they can kind of rely on, or try to get to. And I do think they'll play well in the playoffs. Exactly what that means, I don't know. But in my mind, it'd be like, whatever is not Denver in the first round, assuming it's a healthy Denver, I wouldn't really care if you're 4 or 3 or 6 or whatever. If 6 meant you played the Lakers in the first round, then you'd probably want 6. So, You don't know where the other teams are going to end up right now. You're obviously going to chase wins. But I think it's okay to be frustrated with them, and I think it's also okay to zoom out and go, yeah, probably got too worked up about it at the time. I think those are both probably true.
So you had a comment a few months ago, maybe, on the Dane Moore podcast, and I'm crediting the Dane Moore podcast for this. Dane, if you're listening, I'm giving you credit. Dane Moore podcast, available wherever you get your favorite podcast. I saw him last night.
Did you ask permission, though, or are you just pulling this out?
I'm pulling it. Well, last night I asked for permission when I saw him. I said, do I have permission to use your videos? And I was actually going to send some videos to him and say that he did not get permission. People can follow at Dane Moore NBA if they're wondering what the heck Jace and I are talking about. But you mentioned the comment, and I'm sure the Wolves, this is probably one of those stretches where they were going through it a little bit. You mentioned, and I think it's an astute observation, that they are not a player-led group. And I was just with Dawn Plitzowite earlier today. She had a media scrum, and she talked about the importance of being player-led. And that's something PJ talks about. Every coach I've ever talked to says a great team is often player-led. The coaches don't have to do much. You mentioned to Dane that they're not player-led, and I think it's a smart observation, and it's at the same time kind of a frustrating one because they can be. We just talked about the way Ant can set the tone pretty much on any given night. But do you see a path forward where at some point they can be that player-led team that maybe is a little bit more consistent as they go through? Shoot, even as recently as 2 years ago when they were the number 1 seed in the West for much of the year until the end.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because it's an interesting core. Like if you look at the heart of their core moving forward now and in the future is Ant, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid. Like unless there's some roster shakeup, those guys are kind of the core of your team that you see them moving forward with for the next, foreseeable 3, 4, 5 years or whatever. And those guys are all good players. They're friends with a lot of people on the team. They're fun to be around. And like a lot of times they set great work ethic examples, all that stuff, like getting in their work, improving every summer, all that stuff. But they're just not the most like vocal, hey guys, what is this? We need to do this and this if we want to reach these goals, that kind of stuff. Ant is slowly taking that on. But Jaden and Naz aren't necessarily those people, at least not right now in their careers. So somebody like usually one of your better players has to take that on. It would probably have to be Ant. But for that to be the case, he would also probably have to have a more consistent approach in the regular season, defensively and whatnot, where it's like, okay, he is at least pretty locked into what we're doing here, and keeping himself accountable and everyone else. And I think he does a really good job of that, like come playoff time and this final third of the season. But it will take consistency on his end because I do think he's the one with the voice, the confidence, and the stature to turn into that person. And I think when he does, that's when you'll be like the Wolves are really taking off to where they're consistently top 1, 2, 3 seeds, and he's recognized in an even different light where he's at right now, which is just a really fun superstar to watch, but somebody that you're actually talking about for like the highest awards, honors, top 3 player in the NBA, that kind of stuff. So right now, like they have veterans that are also kind of quiet. Mike's a little quieter. Joe Ingles a little quieter. Kyle Anderson is actually a little bit more vocal, but he just got here.
Yep.
so it often does still fall on Chris Finch.
So let's talk about Kyle. We're 17 minutes into the conversation, and I know you really only agreed to come on if we could talk about your guy Slow-Mo coming back. The first Timberwolf to have 3 different numbers, which I'm sure he's very proud of. What huge. Finchie even mentioned it yesterday, said, I'm playing him right now. He's ready to go. Let's go. And, it is funny how it just feels like he never really left because the shot's the same. The vibe is the same. But how vital of a piece can he be at this point? As a guy who was pretty important the last time around.
I think a pretty big one, just in that he is really a defensive solidifier, and that's a guy who is constantly knowing what the game plan is and the scouting report. And, oh, hey, you're in this matchup. We need to pre-switch you out of this so we don't end up over here, directing traffic, especially defensively, but also a little bit offensively. The sure set of hands, as Chris Finch likes to talk about with guys, that he knows he can trust to have the ball in their hands. So I really like what he does defensively. He can kind of guard anybody. Like last night, he was guarding threes. He can also guard fives. He's been a good Nikola Jokic option defensively in the past. Probably the best second option they can have right now behind Rudy, given this current roster. I think he's a pretty big addition. I think that he'll play a pretty big role. Certainly, there might be a playoff matchup where you're like, it just doesn't quite fit, but I think he's a really nice option, a tool to have in the belt. And I think you'll see a lot of him here down the stretch. And offensively, guys aren't even shy about it. Like Rudy talked about, and I know raised some eyebrows when they're like, hey, what did you miss from Kyle these last 2 years? And he said somebody who passes the ball to his teammates. But then even Ant after the game, it's like, yeah, we need somebody who doesn't want to score. We have a lot of guys who want to score. Me, Jaden, Nas, Julius, we all want to put the ball in the bucket. We're all good at it. So it's great to have somebody who isn't prioritizing that and is, when he's out there, focusing on ways to set other people up to do what they want to do. So I think Mike Conley's played a lot of that stuff, but the body isn't there anymore, and Kyle can kind of come in and take a lot of that burden on and backup point guard stuff and whatever the case may be while being a versatile defender. He doesn't fit on a lot of teams. He really fits on this one pretty well, and the coach trusts him, and that's why he's here. He chose this place over Denver, which obviously would have had a lot of opportunity there as well, because he knows the fit here is good, and the players know that, and you saw it a little bit last night of it just makes sense on this roster. It rounds a lot of stuff out. I'm
pretty sure, by the way, he missed Rudy on the first roll when he got the ball. Did you notice that? I'm sure you were looking for it. Go back and look. I'm pretty sure Rudy was open and he just couldn't pull the trigger and give it to him. So
maybe I only remember the one where he threw one in. I don't even think it was a great lob, but a foul was called. So it was all was forgiven.
Yeah, exactly. He will look for him. Final couple of minutes with Jace Frederick, Pioneer Press, talking Timberwolves on the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Wolves win last night. They've won 4 in a row. They've got Toronto tomorrow night, a game you can hear right here on the Fan. Broadening it out to the Western Conference, we mentioned Oklahoma City and San Antonio are a little bit above of pretty much everybody. They're clear. Their spot seems set. Do you think, is it still Oklahoma City or, the field, basically, as you handicap the Western Conference, or is some of these other teams done enough to think they can take down a team that was pretty unstoppable a year ago at times?
Yeah, it is important to note that 2 of OKC's series went 7. So it wasn't
just not the one here.
7, no, not the one here. But I always say if they won Game 4, it would have went 7 probably. And that was, a 2-point game or whatever at the end. And I know, one close game here or there. You can say that about any series. But they did struggle on the road generally in the playoffs last year. And so I don't know how much head and shoulders above the field they were. It wasn't like a Warriors thing with Katie and Steph where all right, nobody's beating that team. But it's hard to handicap this field because I'm not sure who's going to be healthy. It's always, that team will be healthy eventually. That team will be healthy eventually. But OKC's still down. 2 of their top 6-7 guys right now, and A.J. Mitchell and Jalen Williams. And Denver, obviously, Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson are out. And Aaron Gordon plans to come back maybe even this week, but hamstrings are pretty fickle, and he's aggravated it a few times. So I would rather be the team that is healthy already than the teams that are planning to get healthy, and assuming that everything's going to work well there. If OKC is full strength, I would pick them. I do think just what they have now, the experience, and the guys have had to take on bigger roles this year when other guys have been out. I think that'll make them a little bit more sure in the jumpers they have to hit around Shea, stuff like that. But San Antonio's right there. I think the Wolves could make maybe even a better push this time around, a better effort. Denver is just as good as literally anybody if they're actually all the way healthy. Aaron Gordon is their second most important player. So, if he's out there, Denver's also right there. So I think this Western Conference playoffs, if everybody's healthy, could be phenomenal this year, especially from the semifinals on. But again, it's just that's been the case all season. It's been the story of the season is so rarely our team's at 100% that we don't really have a great barometer to gauge anybody right now.
How scary do you think the Wembanyama Spurs are for not only this year, but for the next 5 to 10, as well as France coming here when the Olympics are in Los Angeles to ruin the party and possibly take the gold medal? I think it's some pretty scary stuff, Jace, that Wemby's doing right now.
He is like the things when in his best games, it's like, well, there is no solution to it. I don't know what you would do here. The Wolves option sometimes is like, well, who can push him the most, like to try to get him away, as far away from the hoop as physically possible. And then he still will just like bury a 22-foot that you thought was tough, but for him, everything's wide open. It's scary. I don't know if this year, there's enough seasoning on those guys to be able to count on them to consistently knock down enough shots when they need it outside of him to get through 4 rounds, because that is a really tough feat. And this is their first go at it. So I don't know if I love them or have a lot of faith in them making it all the way through the West. But man, France, still though, America's going to be the favorites, right? Because even if you have Wemby and you have a decent amount of other players, America's still on one country going to have 8 of the top 15 players in the pool on their team. I still can't imagine. I think it would be a failure if they didn't win anyway. I've always said, hey, we have 12 guys. They're 12 of the top 24 in the world. Play all of them. High pressure defense, run the court up and down, and I still think you win every game by 20. Will they do that? Probably not, but there's no reason still from a talent perspective that everybody should catch up. I strongly believe that.
Last thing, the other thing I love about Wemby is that he is not here for a Oklahoma City coronation. I love the ethical basketball stuff. I love the fact that he goes right at him. And I'm curious, have you seen a shift in just the overall vibe around Oklahoma City coming along more to the tortured Timberwolves fan of me about, how they're officiated, the Chris Finch, they're impossible to play. Finchie gets tossed in, I think, their first game here, maybe their second game here, within the first couple of minutes. Have you seen more of a league-wide, conversation that, what Finchie was talking about, that's actually true? Or is that just wishful thinking from a Minnesota rube like me?
I guess I do think that sometimes when I watch, I feel like Shea's whistle hasn't been the exact same this year. He was out for a little while, but I think when he's come back, I don't think he's gotten the same number of calls. He certainly, I think, has had some times where he's like, that wasn't a foul. And then they're going back down the other way, but we see that for a lot of players on every single team.
Sure.
So I think maybe there's a little bit less there. I'm curious because, in the playoffs, the whistle does loosen. So, it tends to favor the more physical team, whoever that is. And if OKC is, again, the more physical one, maybe they'll call a few more, but it has for years now been whoever is the more physical team, even if they're pushing it right up to that line, is the team that gets the benefit of the whistle. And I always say this, 2 years ago, that was the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Right.
And in Denver, Denver was where are our foul calls? As they're just dying every possession.
Jamal Murray threw a heating pack. Jamal Murray threw a heating pack. That's how bitter he was.
Exactly, because they were feeling like they were getting fouled and they weren't being called. But Minnesota was the more physical team, so it got the benefit of the whistle, and I think I saw a lot of that from OKC last year, and it is it's not, I don't think you're going to be able to complain your way out of it. I really think it's going to be can you go match them? And the one game Minnesota won in the West Finals, they were the more physical team. They were the ones who were hitting first. So I don't know how much the whistle will change in the playoffs. Shea might get less calls. I think maybe that's possible. But I bet defensively you're not going to be bailed out, even by correct calls or whatever. I think you're going to have to go meet them with force. And I think hopefully the Wolves learned that lesson because they didn't do that numerous times in the West Finals last year.
You are the best, man. Thanks as always for joining and jumping in whenever I'm hosting in here. Love talking basketball with you. We'll see you at Target Center and enjoy the week at Target Center, right? 2 more games coming up Thursday and Saturday. So we'll keep reading you at twincities.com. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Gaardsy. Always fun, man.
That is Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press. You can follow him at Jace Frederick on X and read his stuff at the Pioneer Press and twincities.com. When we come back, something happened in college sports yesterday. It's actually a government bit that's hilarious, and it ties in to a very special and ominous Minnesota anniversary from, I think, 50 years ago, which is pretty crazy to think about how fast things have changed. I'm going to give you those details before we get back to some Vikings discussion in the 4 o'clock hour and Alec Lewis at 4:30. Welcome back. Gaardsy in for Barreiro today. Cake Show edition of Bumper to Bumper. Alec Lewis will join at 4:30. Pat Kessler will join probably around 5:15. He usually gets in here pretty early. We jump in, and I let him come in at 5:15 when I'm in this big chair. But good stuff from Jace Frederick. Love talking Wolves with him. I did want to mention some breaking news with a little bit of a local angle, and news that we knew was coming at some point, but now has come. Lou Holtz has died. He had been in hospice care, I believe, for at least the last couple of weeks. I certainly remember, within the last few weeks, people talking about it. But 89 years old, his family released a statement, and they put it from his kind of Lou Holtz family Twitter account, but Notre Dame football put out a statement as well. And I mentioned he's 89 years old, 6 different schools, William and Mary, NC State, Arkansas, Minnesota for 2 years, Notre Dame, and South Carolina. He also coached the New York Jets in 1976, only for 13 games, 3-10. So he's obviously a legendary name. You can fade it down. This is Dan's bit. You can fade it down. He, legendary name, legendary after he coached, spent a million years on ESPN, a bunch of commentary work. I remember him. I think Reese Davis and Mark May did kind of a wrap-up show after the deal. But he's obviously remembered here in kind of a complicated way because he left. He's the one that made us all paranoid, I think, and about coaches being successful and then moving on to greener pastures. And he coached here, like I said, for 2 years. I think he recruited Darrell Thompson, but never coached him. My guy, who's on the Gopher Radio Network crew with us, the second all-time leading rusher now, University of Minnesota history. Recruited Darrell, never coached him because he was on his way to Notre Dame. And I'll just read this part from the ESPN story that talked about him. Notre Dame hired Holtz in 86 to restore a once proud program that had stumbled under Jerry Faust. The hire fulfilled a childhood dream for Holtz, who grew up in the 1940s listening to Notre Dame football on the radio. Throughout his career, he fondly recalled marching to the Notre Dame Victory March during grade school in Ohio. Holtz even had the Notre Dame clause written into his Minnesota contract that would allow him to leave for the Irish only if he took the Gophers to a bowl game. He did. That happened in 1985, opening the door for Holtz to lead the Irish. His introductory news conference, I could not possibly turn down the opportunity to come to Notre Dame. I just felt this was the dream of a lifetime. And it is interesting because you've heard about that Notre Dame clause. I've always wondered if it was apocryphal or not apocryphal. What's the word I'm looking for? If it was like an old wives' tale, if it was real, or if it was just one of those things, Brett, that you hear about that, oh, yeah, he had the Notre Dame clause written into his contract. He had to go.
It's like the Kyler Murray Call of Duty clause. Yeah, exactly.
Something like that. Because I always wonder, well, why would, if you're the Gophers, why would you put that in there? Are you so desperate that you want Lou Holtz to be your coach? You say, and by the way, if you're the if Notre Dame calls, yeah, you can go. We'll put it in your contract. That it always seemed to me backwards. I got to figure that out. But yeah, he obviously went on to win a national championship in 1988. You can watch, when you're growing up as a child of the 90s, like I did, it didn't get any bigger than Notre Dame. In fact, that's the last time they won a national championship, believe it or not. Like people may not believe that or remember that because they still are Notre Dame and they still have their own TV deal and they are in the college football playoff consistently. And when they're not, they pout and don't even play in the Pop-Tart Bowl. Which what an opportunity to pass up playing in the Pop-Tart Bowl.
Enjoy the season. Yeah.
Enjoy the season. Go down to Orlando. But he's got quite a legacy here in Minnesota, obviously, for coming here and turning things pretty quickly to get them. Back then, going to a bowl game was a big deal. There weren't 500 of them. There wasn't the Pop-Tart Bowl. There wasn't the Cheez-It Bowl. There's not the Motor City Bowl anymore because that one's gone under. But there weren't 40 bowl games every year. There was a handful. And to actually get to a bowl was a big deal. And to turn things that quickly was a big deal. His other legacy here, besides making us paranoid that every coach was always going to leave, because I don't think any coach has ever really left since then for greener pastures, so to speak. They've gotten contract extensions because of it, because we always say, well, they're going to leave We're just always going back to 1986. As I understand it, it was his idea to move football to the Metrodome. His theory was it's going to be a professional stadium, and guys want to play in professional stadiums. And it was built, the Dome was built in 1982, and Dan Minnesota, if he's listening, could find this more quickly than I could. But they had a clause in their deal with the Dome. It was kind of like an opt-out clause. I think 2 years into the deal, they started playing there in 1982. And in 1984, the decision had to be made. Okay, are we staying here in the Dome, or are we going back to Memorial Stadium on campus? And I'm pretty sure it was Holtz that said, we're staying. We're staying in the Dome. People want to play in the Dome. The athletes want to come here and compete in the Dome. It's a professional stadium. That's what we got to be thinking about. And that obviously, in my opinion, turned into a disastrous situation that and Memorial Stadium was not a good spot from what I'm told. I never saw it. I don't remember it. It was kind of gone by the time I started going to games. But I've traveled around the Big Ten now 15 years. Oh, good for me. And around the country now for all these stadiums. There's a lot of old Memorial Stadiums that were then refurbished or remodeled, and they all look the same. They all have the brick. They all have the horseshoe. They all have the new press box. They all have the suites around the top. Like, you could have probably figured out a way to keep football on campus back then, but you just think about the generational setback of like just the college football vibe that Minnesota lost by going to the Metrodome. It's right there. And take my upbringing, for example. We didn't tailgate when we went to go for games when we were a kid. Games were all at 6 o'clock because nobody wanted to go inside at noon on a beautiful fall Saturday. So the games were at 6. You'd pull up at like 5:45. You'd walk into the game. You'd watch the Gophers probably lose by $1 million with Jim Wacker and Goody towards the end. And then you'd go home at 9:30. And that'd be your college football experience. And now, I mean, you've heard Gopher Football Sunday now for a handful of years, Brett. You've heard Bernsey and I talk about now that football's been back on campus for 15 years, basically, like there actually is like a vibe again. Like there's things like the first few years in the stadium after the first few years of the Kill era, it was rough, man. I mean, because they hadn't been built up. Tailgating hadn't been cultivated. There weren't people that were 30 years old tailgating that are now 45, a little bit older than me.
Tommy Olsen didn't have a spot yet.
The Olsens didn't have their spot. They might have, but there was nobody else next to him. And now everybody's back. Yeah, and now that Tommy's a young alum, like he and all his buddies, they're all coming back. But so it's an interesting legacy for Lou Holtz here because he's obviously one of the all-time greats. There's no denying that. And the stories about him, just how he would coach, how he would motivate, how he would inspire. He became a very successful corporate speaker. No surprise there. You watch the 30 for 30s on Catholics versus convicts, Notre Dame, Miami. I mean, as good as it gets if you love college football. And Lou Holtz, this small little guy with a funny voice, was the guy behind all of it. So I'm hoping at some point here, let me just do some live production work on the air. I'm hoping that Pete Najarian will be able to join us because he knew Lou really well, obviously, from his time at the U, and I think just recently spent some time with them in Florida. So I'm hoping to catch up with him. We've got Alec Lewis coming up at the bottom of the hour at 4:30, and Pat Kessler, of course, at 5:15. But worth passing along an ode to Lou Holtz, former Gopher coach, former a legend in college football space, died at 89 years old.